I do know that the Lord is prompting me to urge us to get ready for that great and dreadful day.
Welcome to Searching Isaiah. I'm your host, Randy Brown. This will be a short series of insights on Isaiah for those who desire to have eyes to see and gain the spirit of prophecy in these end times. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to our episode 3 of 15 to 20 minutes with Isaiah. And I have to say, when I say 15 to 20 minutes, that probably translates into I'm trying to keep it short. Don't hold me to that exact time frame. They'll probably be a little bit different, but we will keep them short so it's bite-sized pieces and can be a little bit more easily digested. So, question as we start today's episode. And by the way, today's episode, we're going to dive into a little bit more of the manner of prophesying amongst the Jews. And we're going to look at code names, word links, and types. But the question I pose is, does the great and marvelous work, and I think we've defined what the great and marvelous work is, does that include the great and dreadful day? And so hopefully as we finish today's episode, you'll feel like you can answer that question. And also, I recommend, if you're following these short podcasts on Isaiah, be sure to watch them in order. Probably don't have to, but it might help because I think they're building upon each other. So another question is the manner of prophesying amongst the Jews a way of veiling deeper mysteries? And are they being veiled for those who will seek eyes to see and who will strive to attain the gift of prophecy? And I think in my last episode, I was calling it the manner of the Jews, and wisely, one of the listeners corrected me. It's the manner of prophesying amongst the Jews, because the manner of the Jews could often be somewhat unholy, but the manner of prophesying amongst the Jews is what we're talking about. So has Isaiah invited us to part that veil? Last week, as I was preparing for this week's episode, I was sitting in an endowment session and I was pondering the similarities between what we're taught in an endowment. We're being taught through veiled symbolisms, the way to part the veil and come back into the presence of God. And I think it's the same process with Isaiah. Through these veiled symbolisms and tools that the that the Jews used to prophesy, we are learning to part the veil and see for ourselves the vision of the great and marvelous work. And we'll dive more into that here in a minute. But as I've thought about the last couple of weeks, I feel like Jesus Christ and Nephi provide really good templates for us to begin this process of unveiling this incredible vision of the great and marvelous work. And I think that if all you know about Isaiah is what Nephi and Jesus put in their templates, last week we referred to them as brackets. But let's kind of shift a little bit and call them templates. I think if you could just see what's in those two templates, you'll know more about Isaiah than almost everyone. And then being able to see that begins to open up things. And so that's where I want to go today. So is Isaiah a veiled prophecy about this great and marvelous work, this end time period? And is it meant to be searched rather than read? So again, Jesus's template, and this is in 3rd Nephi, chapters 20 through 23. There's three elements that Jesus includes in this template. The first one, I'm gonna start color coding things, so it makes it much more easy to see. Because once you start seeing this, this vision is going to open up. So in purple, I've put God's covenants with the house of Israel. So again, this is Jesus's template, and the first element is about the house of Israel, God's covenants with them. The second element, which I'm color coding in orange, is the role of the Gentiles and a warning to the Gentiles. And then the last thing in his template is the miraculous blessings for the barren wife. And you might remember we identified the barren wife as his covenant with the house of Israel that they broke, that they strayed from. But these promises that the Father made to Abraham was to restore them, bring them back. And again, we'll dive more deeply. But if you're taking notes, be sure to write down those three things. Be sure to write down God's covenants with the house of Israel, the role of the Gentiles, and the miraculous blessings for the barren wife. The second template we've been looking at is Nephi's. We called it the Great and Marvelous Bracket. And there's three elements in this too. So if you're taking notes, write down these three things. And between these two templates, there's 6 things that if you start to understand that this is where we're being led, I think it'll really open things up for you. So again, I'm color coding this. The first part of the Great and Marvelous template that Nephi put together is a wilderness journey. And I asked the question last week, why would he include chapters about a wilderness journey in this? The next is destruction. Is a wilderness journey part of the Great and Marvelous work? Is destruction a big part of the Great and Marvelous work? And then, of course, deliverance is the glorious part of this Great and Marvelous work that we're having our vision opened up to. So again, focusing on Nephi's template. And again, it has the 2 bookends, Great and Marvelous on both ends, and what's in between is where we're supposed to look. And so the wilderness journey, and I'm color coding this in blue. And then I have 2 little people in orange. When we see orange, that's going to represent the Gentiles, and purple is going to represent the house of Israel. And so just kind of helping you kind of start to see that this wilderness journey includes the role of Ephraim, the Gentile Ephraimites, and their role in going out and gathering and bringing the house of Israel upon their shoulders to Zion. The next part of it is destruction. And that's kind of where we're going to dive into today. We're going to really go into this. And I want to kind of plant this in your mind that when you see destruction, you're going to see in Isaiah that it's talking about the Lord's hand. You'll see this term hand, and that's going to be really important. But when it talks about destruction, it's referring to the left hand. There's going to be a left hand of the Lord and a right hand of the Lord. When it comes to destruction, that's the left hand, and we're gonna see a little bit more what that means. This hand, and then the last element in this template is deliverance, and you'll begin to see that when Isaiah talks about the deliverance of the house of Israel, he's referring to another hand. This is the right hand, and so kind of just keep that at the forefront of your mind. It's going to start to make sense here soon. As I was kind of pondering on this in the temple, I thought about Nephi's vision that starts in First Nephi 11, and as his vision opened, as the veil was parted for him, and heavenly messengers appeared to him, he was told to look. And I went through and I counted. As he's shown this vision of the great and marvelous work, I counted 10 times in his vision that he was told to look. I think this really applies to what we're doing here with these short classes on Isaiah. Is this a pattern for us to gain eyes to see this incredible vision and to attain the spirit of prophecy. I would say that Isaiah is for those who will look. They want to know and gain this vision of the great and marvelous work. Just like Nephi wanted to know the vision of his father. He wanted to know about the tree of life. And my testimony to you is that as you really look, as we do this, this is for those who are wanting to part the veil. This is for those who want to obtain the spirit of prophecy. And as you do that, you're going to see a vision of your role. And I hope that you'll be looking for that. What is my role in this great and marvelous work? So look to see your role in this grand tapestry, this incredible vision. And so I met with a group of friends the other night, and we kind of talked about this. And one of my friends asked, why is it veiled? Why would God do that? And I think this will become pretty clear. But here are just a few of my thoughts on this. This wilderness journey that Nephi is kind of opening our eyes up to for us as we search Isaiah to see this wilderness journey, that this wilderness journey is going to be so sanctifying that it may not be for everybody to see right now. The destruction that's part of his template is so great and dreadful, and the deliverance is going to be so great and marvelous. And the promises to the house of Israel, are also marvelous and great. And the role of the Gentiles is great and marvelous as well. So another reason I would say that perhaps Isaiah's vision is veiled is because once you see it, you're responsible. And these roles, especially of us, the Ephraimite Gentiles, are going to be so incredible that if you were to see the whole thing, and you will be accountable and you'll be responsible for that. And when I shared this with my friend the other night, he said, "Bring it on." And hopefully that's the way you'll feel as well. So again, here's our template. The two parts to our template is Nephi's part and the Savior's part. And again, take note of these 6 elements, because this is going to be a huge part of beginning to see where we're going. So we're going to dive today into the second part of Nephi's template, which is destruction. And so to dive into this, we're going to begin to look at code names and types, and also some word links. These are code names and types from Isaiah's day. And the two that we want to start with, the first is Assyria. You'll see Assyria all over the book of Isaiah. And you'll see Egypt. Now, again, these are things from his day that we're supposed to liken to us and ask, what does this mean in our day? So let's see. Okay, so let's look at first Egypt. And these are some of the, I guess you'd say, the characteristics of Egypt in Isaiah's day. It was an elite power that was sliding into decline, and it was rapidly deteriorating. It was they were religious, but they were really turning towards the worshiping of idols. They had a strong military, perhaps the most powerful in the world, but they turned to relying upon the arm of flesh. And they were a very industrious nation, but began suffering economic woes. And so as you look at that description of Egypt, what nation today fills this type? And I think it kind of is pretty obvious, but I ask you to pray about it and ask for yourself, who is this Egypt that Isaiah is referring to and using as a type for our day? The next great power that Isaiah talks about from his day is Assyria. And Assyria was a militaristic power, and it often talks about this power coming from the north. And that's important because it'll be a linking word to other prophets like Daniel and others. And it was a militaristic power that sought to rule the entire world and to do it by establishing a false peace or offering a false peace. And, and then this power, Assyria, suddenly conquers and destroys. And in Isaiah, it says, like a flood. I don't know how many of you know Zachary Levi. He's an actor. He's a really good Christian guy. And I was listening to a podcast. It was, I think, Glenn Beck podcast on Saturday, and he was interviewing Zachary Levi, and he was talking about how the Lord has kind of given him a like a stewardship or kind of a vision of what he's to prepare for in the coming days, and he feels like the Lord has told him that a flood is coming, and that really stood out to me, especially in light of preparing this particular episode. And so, question: does Assyria and does this flood that is described in Isaiah describe the great and dreadful day? I think that's really pertinent right now because you know, President Nelson in his talk in the most recent conference said that he feels prompted to help us prepare for the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And the great and dreadful day is not the second coming. It's the period of time before the second coming, as he cleanses the earth of certain elements, secret combinations, the whore of Babylon, on and on. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week. So, question is, does this great and marvelous work that we're beginning to see a vision of, does it include also the great and dreadful day that President Nelson just warned us that he's preparing us for? And interestingly enough, a friend of mine posted this picture on Facebook this week. I thought, oh my goodness, that's a really good description or image of two very drastic things happening at the same time. You've got destruction, and then you've got like something great and marvelous, like a deliverance. So one of the things that I hope that you'll begin to love doing is what I call word searching. And I think there's so much to be learned by, typing in a word or a phrase and seeing where it takes you. So I typed in destruction a day or two ago. And one of the verses I was led to is from the Book of Mormon, and it's Mormon chapter 8. And I think as we go through these short classes, you're going to begin to see that the Book of Mormon is right in sync with the Book of Isaiah, very similar, and that the way they maintain the intricacy of the language is just kind of mind-blowing. And so in verse 7, he talks about great and marvelous is the destruction of my people, the Nephites. And so you see this term great and marvelous. And again, I'm going to start highlighting these things in color so it becomes more and more obvious. Great and marvelous is the destruction. There's that word that we searched for. And behold, it is the hand of the Lord which hath done it. And so Mormon here is kind of demonstrating this manner of prophesying among the Jews. He's using a type. He's using the type of the destruction of the Nephites as a type of the destruction that we'll see before the second coming of Jesus Christ. He's using word linking. He's linking the hand of the Lord with great and marvelous and with destruction. And he's using code names. Hand of the Lord, you'll see, is a code name. So he's intentionally paralleled these words. And once you kind of get eyes to see this, it becomes, at least for me, extremely exciting. So he's paralleled great and marvelous, destruction, and hand. So again, he's using three really important parts of searching, and that's the use of types, the use of code names, and the use of word links. And he's done this for the destruction at the time of the Father's great and marvelous work. So maybe we're starting to see that destruction is a part of this great and marvelous work. Scriptures refer to this the day of Jehovah. This is the day when the things have become fully ripe and judgment comes upon the people, especially here in America. This is referring to the destruction of what Isaiah is going to talk about as a Babylon category of people. Here, Mormons using this exact same technique. And if we have eyes to see, we can see that Mormons saying, "Wake up, Gentiles. I have seen your great and marvelous destruction." And so we're going to begin looking at how Isaiah does this. And you're going to begin to see some of these words that he uses that are code names. And so in Isaiah, when you see anger and hand and river and king of Assyria, you're going to begin to see that he's talking about the same thing. Okay? And here's two examples that you probably wouldn't link together if you're just reading Isaiah instead of searching Isaiah. So here in Isaiah 5:25, he says, yet for all this, his anger is not abated. And so I've gone ahead and made anger bigger, put it in gray, which ties back to destruction. And then in Isaiah 9:12, his hand is upraised still. And once you begin to understand some of these pseudonyms or code words, you're going to begin to see how they link together. So if we're just reading Isaiah, we're probably not going to see that what Isaiah is doing here is defining who this hand is. This is the left hand. Okay. So this is from Isaiah 8:7. And you'll see linking here as well. Therefore will my Lord cause to come up over them the great and mighty waters of the river. So he's using this imagery of a river, the king of Assyria. So here he's linking the river to the king of Assyria. So when you see river in Isaiah, it's referring to this king of Assyria. And we're going to talk about who he is here in a second. And it's going to hopefully all come together. The king of Assyria in all his glory, he will rise up over his channels and overflow all of his banks. So we're talking about a tyrant who is part of this great and dreadful day and this destruction, and that he's going to be overflowing the world. So here we're looking at king of Assyria, king of Babylon, staff, rod, anger, and wrath. Again, these are all linked together. These are all pseudonyms for a person that Isaiah refers to as the king of Assyria or the king of Babylon. So here in Isaiah 10:5, hail the Assyrian, the rod of my anger. He has a staff, my wrath in their hand. So again, without understanding how he's using these code words, you could just read over that and go, what the heck did he just say? Okay. But once we begin seeing this, then we can look over at another, a word search. We can find Isaiah 14, 4-6. It says, you will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon and say, the tyrant has met his end and tyranny ceased. Jehovah has broken the staff of the wicked, the rod of those who ruled. Him who with unerring blows struck down the nations in anger and subdued peoples in his wrath by relentless oppression. So this, hopefully you're going to begin to see this amazing tapestry that Isaiah is weaving. And you're going to begin to see how these link together, how the king of Assyria is also the king of Babylon. They're the same character. He is also the staff, the rod, the anger, and the wrath of God. So here you kind of see, Assyrian is linked to the king of Babylon. You see anger in both of these verses. You see staff used in both of these verses, and wrath. So this helps you kind of begin to see what Isaiah is doing. So here's a little blurb from Avraham Gileadi's apocalyptic commentary. And he says, Jehovah's rod, staff, anger, wrath, vengeance, and left hand of punishment all designate the king of Assyria, Babylon. Okay, so whenever you see these terms, it's talking about this tyrant that will be a part of this destruction that we're beginning to see, that's prophesied for our day. Okay, Jehovah sends him against the godless nation of his own will in their unrepentant state and against the nations of the world. So this left hand of God, this wrath and vengeance and anger, this king of Assyria, is going to be sent against the godless nation. Who could that possibly be, that godless nation? These are things we're going to begin to see more clearly as we learn to search, and against the godless nations of the world, so not just against that one nation. Here we can see that the king of Assyria causes quaking. Okay, so from Isaiah 5:25, therefore the anger of Jehovah is kindled against his people. He draws back his hand against them and strikes them. The mountains quake and their corpses lie like litter about the streets. Okay, and then using word linking, we can find that in Isaiah 4:6 that word quaking or quake is used, and here we see that, is this the man who made the earth shake and the kingdoms quake? So this man is linked to anger and hand, and the king of Assyria. This again from the apocalyptic commentary by Avraham Gileadi. Although Isaiah uses the imagery of an angry parental God, the truth is that Jehovah is a loving and long-suffering God towards his people. But because he is also a just and righteous God, he must enforce upon them the consequences of their actions. In this instance, the king of Assyria, Babylon, who personifies Jehovah's anger, acts as his hand of punishment. Aside from literal earthquakes, it is he who is stirred to anger, who causes the mountains. Mountains in Isaiah can also refer to nations, cause the nations to quake, and who reduces the wicked to litter or chaos. So without seeing these things, Isaiah just doesn't make any sense. But once you start to see this intentional use of these code names, then it becomes very clear. This is a picture from a book that I purchased called Isaiah Illustrated by Rhonda Pickering. And in the book, she has a list of code names. Right now we're looking at, and again, this is all in gray. This is code names that have to do with this destruction that we're beginning to see. And you can see anger, king of Assyria, king of Babylon. As you go on down, you'll see the word flood. Now, these are very chaotic words and destructive type words. As we move through this program, we'll begin to see, in the category of deliverance, we'll begin to see the right hand. Yes, the right hand, and the code words for the Lord's right hand, and also code names for the Lord himself. So here's what I would recommend if you're following these episodes. Start making a list of the things that you're beginning to see. Okay, this will be really important. I think it'll really also help you focus. And but last week we talked about three things, and maybe these can be on your list. That we saw the great division that would occur amongst the Gentiles, those who would believe the great and marvelous work and those who would not. We saw a gathering to lands of inheritance. This is the role of the Gentiles gathering the house of Israel back to the covenants and to the gospel and to their lands of inheritance. The third thing we saw last week was those who did not believe. These Gentiles who would not believe the fullness of the gospel, although a man should declare it unto them. And that word "man" is in yellow. That has to do with deliverance. Okay, and we're going to we're going to get there. So don't just kind of keep that at the forefront of your mind. This week, a couple more things you might add to your list. Isaiah depicts two superpowers during this end time, during this time of the great and marvelous work when destruction and deliverance are happening simultaneously. And that one of them is an ungodly nation that's in decline, and the other is a superpower that seeks world domination with anger and wrath, and that Jehovah sends a tyrant against a godless nation who he refers to as his left hand. So again, there are two hands, his left hand and his right hand, one with destruction and one deals with deliverance. And so again, today's episode was to dive into Nephi's template, and we took one element of it, which is destruction, and we saw some of the code words, the code names that Isaiah is using: king of Assyria, rod, staff, anger, wrath, vengeance, left hand. And so as you use your own scriptures and you're marking, first of all, we're gonna be using the Isaiah Institute translation. So you'll want to be using that as we go through, rather than the King James. It's much clearer, much more consistent, and I think this color coding will be really helpful. And so one last example of word linking. I did a little search of great and marvelous, and this came up from 3 Nephi chapter 11, verse 1. And now it came to pass that there were a great multitude gathered together of the people of Nephi round about the temple, which was in the land of Bountiful, and they were marveling one with another. They were marveling and wondering one with another, and were showing one to another the great and marvelous change that had taken place. This is what's so mind-blowing to me, how consistent the scriptures are with these terms. And so the great and marvelous change, here, this is a type. This is a type of the great and marvelous destruction that's going to occur in our day before the second coming. This is a type of this great and dreadful day of the Lord that President Nelson was referring to. And this is a type of the destruction of Babylon, a category of people that will be removed from the earth in preparation for Zion and for a terrestrial existence. And also the removal of the king of Assyria, who we just learned about today, who's this tyrant. And this is from the teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith, page 194. And he said, the consistent use of terminology is one of the things that makes the Book of Mormon the most correct book. And as I've begun to see this is just really, again, borne witness to me that the Book of Mormon is exactly what it's claimed to be and what prophets have declared it to be. And so I hope for all of us, we'll begin to see this vision of the great and marvelous work as we begin to kind of see what Isaiah is doing, learn some of these tools that those who've gone before us have prepared for us. And a question as we wrap up: are there code names and types for deliverance? And we'll be getting there.